Hello, I'm Esther Githu Ewart. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. The race for the U.S. presidency is heating up, and the southern state of Georgia is one of a handful of states that could decide the outcome. The United Nations World Food Programme is investigating 2 of its top officials in Sudan over allegations of fraud. And Seeds of Peace, lessons on how to provide children of war a chance to rebuild a secure future. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. In the tight race for the U.S. presidency, the southern state of Georgia is one of a handful of states that may decide the outcome. VOA correspondent Scott Stearns reports on what the campaigns are doing in Georgia and how they hope to carry this key swing state.
Kamala Harris chose a bus trip through Georgia as her first post-Democratic convention campaigning, starting at a high school band practice, where running mate Tim Walz talked about the joyful work of their campaign.
I'm grateful to be part of a team with a really great head coach here in your next president of the United States, Kamala Harris.
And Harris praised young Georgians' leadership.
Your generation, all that you guys stand for, everything you have at stake is what is going to propel our country into the next era of what we can do and what we can do.
Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump led Georgia political polls through much of this election cycle. But with Joe Biden out of the race, most now show Trump and Harris are tied. Trump running mate J.D. Vance was in Georgia last week.
We're going to do it together, but only if you get us across the finish line in Georgia. This is one of the most important states in the union.
Vance and Trump are campaigning largely on what they say are economic and immigration policy failures, both of which Trump told Georgia voters should be blamed on Harris.
With your vote, inflation will stop. The illegal aliens will be turned back. They're not coming in. We got to stop them. Did you see where she's now saying, oh, we had a very good border, oh, great. They had the worst border in the history of the world.
Trump winning Republican votes in Georgia is complicated by his denunciation of the state's popular Republican governor, Brian Kemp, who won re-election 2 years ago despite a Trump-backed primary challenge. Earlier this month, Trump repeatedly blamed Kemp and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger for his Georgia loss in 2020.
Raffensperger and Brian Kemp, your governor, who I got elected, by the way. If it wasn't for me, he would not be your governor. I think everybody knows that. He's a very disloyal person, isn't he? Very disloyal.
With Georgia polls tightening, Trump used his social media site last week to thank Kemp for all his help and support in Georgia. Kemp is set to co-host a Trump fundraiser in Atlanta Thursday. A Georgia grand jury indicted Trump and some of his allies last year over their attempts to illegally interfere with the state's 2020 election results. Trump attorneys this week again appealed for the dismissal of those charges in a case that will not go to trial before Election Day. Georgia's state election board Monday approved new rules that critics say could disrupt finalizing the state's November election results. 2 board members voted against the change. The 3 board members who passed it were all hailed by name by Trump this month as, quote, pit bulls fighting for honesty, transparency, and victory. Scott Stearns, VOA News.
The UN World Food Programme is investigating 2 of its top officials in Sudan over allegations including fraud and concealing information from donors about its ability to deliver food aid to civilians. VOA's Philip Alexiou has more on the probe.
Reuters is reporting that 5 sources they spoke with say investigators are looking into some staff at the World Food Programme who might have tried to hide information about an alleged role of Sudan's army in obstructing aid delivery during the 16-month war with the rival paramilitary fighting for control of the country. According to Reuters, the WFP said allegations of individual misconduct related to irregularities in parts of the operation in Sudan are under urgent review by the Inspector General's office. Meantime, in flood-stricken Tokar City, desperate people of the Red Sea state flee with whatever possessions they have left, walking on the road, on donkeys and donkey-driven carts, with their goats and camels. Ahmed Haddad fled with his wife, his mother, aunt, and 3 children.
There is no food. Look at our things. There is no food. We milked about a pound of milk from our goat and added a pound of water to it.
While some people try resting under makeshift tents, trucks and bulldozers try filling the muddy road with sand to get families out who are stranded in Tokar. Road worker Al Noor says crews have been working for days since the floods began as families suffer and can't find food.
The floods were strong, and the families inside are suffering. There are deaths and bodies that we want to get out, but there is no road. We have 10 machines working, but they have stopped because of the mud on the street, and they can't get out. We are working on filling the street so that we can enter Tokar. The situation is very, very catastrophic.
People do what they can to save one another. Ahmed Haddad says they would throw ropes to people to try to save them from the water.
The flood in Tokar works like this, taking away things and people. We throw people a rope and tie them from their arms and drag them. The people of Tokar are very tired. The flood took away our corn and flour. It took away my 2 goats and my donkey.
Another man says people who have died have yet to be buried, and more people are missing. Some 118,000 people have been displaced nationwide and more than 300,000 affected across the country as the floods destroyed homes and could spread diseases including cholera. Sudan's dams, roads, and bridges were already in disrepair before the war between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary rapid forces, which began in April of 2023. Both sides have since funneled the bulk of their resources into the conflict, leaving infrastructure badly neglected. Sudan is also fighting severe hunger all over the country, and the World Food Program, now conducting an investigation of fraud, needs at least $23 billion to feed millions of people, with more than 1 million in Sudan alone. Philip Alexio, VOA News.
In an interview with VOA, United Nations experts say terror groups in Africa are increasing their use of drones to carry out operations previously only possible to nation-states. From Somalia to the Sahel, reporter Henry Wilkins looks at how this makes the work of African states fighting insurgencies even more difficult.
These drone images, which VOA has been unable to independently verify, purport to show al-Shabaab's attack on an airport in Kenya in 2021, as well as the use of drones by the armed groups JNIM and ISWAP to coordinate attacks in Mali and Nigeria. According to UN experts, terror groups in Africa linked to Al-Qaeda and Islamic State are making increasing use of consumer drones to carry out operations.
Airborne capability, so allows them to have better view of the battle space and their operating environments. Also provides them with a new way of being able to gather intelligence, and in that way also to plan and coordinate attacks. Also sometimes with a higher degree of lethality and precision.
Experts point out that militaries fighting insurgencies and facing terrorist threats from the air for the first time are at a disadvantage. Karen Allen, a senior research advisor at the Institute for Security Studies, has written extensively on the subject of drone use by terror groups.
It conveys a significant psychological advantage to armed groups who in the past may have been at a disadvantage compared to regular armies. So it's leveled the playing field, if you like, between regular forces and irregular forces.
While it's unclear exactly how many incidences of drone use by terror groups there have been in Africa, instances have been recorded in Somalia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Nigeria, and Mozambique. Figueiredo says the Central Sahel has borne the brunt of the new trend, however, which has spread from IS and Al-Qaeda in Iraq and Syria to their affiliates in Africa. Alan adds that the use of drones by terror groups is difficult to stop because drones are easy to buy for civilian use on the internet.
I think there is a real difficulty in being able to stop the use of a technology which is a dual-use technology. I mean, think of a mobile phone. Mobile phone can be used most of the time to be able to communicate and have a completely benign purpose, but it can also be used to trigger a tripwire and to cause an ID to explode.
She adds that African nations need to invest in anti-drone systems. This may include tech that jams radio signals, disabling drones, and even anti-drone lasers. Henry Wilkins, VOA News.
The 74th session of the World Health Organization Regional Committee for Africa is underway in Congo, Brazzaville. The regional committee is the WHO decision-making body in the region. Eric Kawa has more.
The 74th session of the WHO Regional Committee meeting is gradually coming to an end here in Brazzaville. But of course, today has been quite a very engaging day as well as the sessions continue to proceed. This morning, there was a session about the Lusaka agenda, which talks about the global health initiatives. And of course, there were also issues about climate change and in relation to that of health. Another key issue that took center stage is about how African countries are also in a position to be able to capacitated in providing and making their own vaccines. This is a key thing that also happened today. Later on today, there's a press conference about malaria, where also they'll be having discussions about the malaria disease that is affecting Africa and also that of the Mpox virus, which is now affecting the continent and being declared by the WHO as a health emergency of international concern. And another key thing to highlight is an expectation. There will be a declaration, but what will that declaration be? Well, we're still here monitoring the situation to find out, and we'll keep you posted as to what the outcomes will be. Eric Kawa reporting for VOA in Brazzaville, Congo.
The impact of the Mpox outbreak in parts of Africa is wide-ranging, especially for those in and around conflict zones. The majority of deaths are occurring in children under 5 years. For more, I'm joined live from Kinshasa by Dr. John Ditekemena, Country Director at the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation. Dr. Ditekemena, how bad is the Mpox outbreak in the DRC, and what worries you the most?
Thanks, Esther. This is a big crisis indeed. We are experiencing an increase in Mpox new cases in the country. As of August 26th, around 18,000 suspect cases have been reported, and around 4,800 confirmed cases, and 600 deaths. Most affected are children and adolescents. Likely due to the household transmission. And the most factors that are making worsen the situation are the fact that DRC is experiencing the armed conflict, mostly in eastern part, in south and north regions, but also around 1.3 million as of today are IDPs, the internally displaced persons, and with the weak immunity that can help us, lead us to anticipate that people living with HIV and children are mostly affected, and malnutrition is playing also a key role on that.
Right, Doctor. You mentioned, concern about women, and we understand there are also children living with HIV and AIDS as well in those areas of conflict zones. But why is Mpox particularly dangerous for this group of people?
Oh, this is very, very, very dangerous because there are evidence that show that this group is very most vulnerable. For instance, particularly for women, pregnant women, there is a study that evaluated maternal outcome in pregnancy and the complications that reported 34.3% of fertility cases in pregnant women with Mpox. This means that this increased the likelihood of death by twofold. and miscarriage and preterm at 39.9%, around 40% of this complication, and vertical transmission, mother to child, has been also reported. So there is a lot of...
Doctor, very quickly, let's address, I understand that there was a meeting between you medical doctors, the DRC government, and also WHO to come up with an action plan to help DRC combat the Mpox. What more can you tell us, maybe very, very briefly?
Actually, there are a lot of meetings and consultations going on. The government, the WHO, and other stakeholders are working mostly to get vaccines provided to the country. And we were expecting some doses already that had been delayed. Actions are actually aligned with the WHO recommendation, including strengthened surveillance, enhanced scale-up and equity access to the medical care. And as you may know, we are doing putting into actions prevention measures, as that had been implemented also for COVID, but specifically adapted to Mpox.
Dr. Ditekemena, thank you very much for talking to us. John Ditekemena is the Congo Country Director at the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation. We'd like to hear what you think about Africa54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, lessons on how to provide children of war a chance to rebuild a secure future. We'll be right back.
As technology advances and artificial intelligence continue to make breakthrough advances that benefit humanity, there are also growing concerns that it mirrors societal patriarchal structures and it could worsen the digital divide. On this week's edition of Our Voices, we will discuss the state of women in AI today, whether AI-powered services lack diverse gender perspectives, and how to ensure equitable digital future for all. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
In other news, Nigeria has received its first shipment of Mpox vaccines donated by the United States to battle the ongoing outbreak of the disease. The 10,000 vaccine doses aims to strengthen the nation's fight against Mpox. Nigeria has more than 40 confirmed and 830 suspected cases in 13 of its states. Ethiopia says it has more than doubled electricity production for its controversial mega dam on the Blue Nile after 2 more turbines started operations. The multi-billion-dollar Grand Renaissance Dam, long a source of tensions with downstream nations Egypt and Sudan, is now generating over 1,500 megawatts of electricity, according to dam officials. And South Africa has active investigations into alleged corruption totaling more than $7 billion at some of its top state-owned companies. The details are contained in a report submitted to a parliamentary committee by the National Anti-Graft Unit. A new restaurant in Kenya is generating business and buzz not just because of the food, but because of the staff. Robots serving dishes are the main attraction of diners who flock to the Robot Cafe. Juma Majanga reports from Nairobi.
Welcome. It's lunchtime at the Robot Cafe in Nairobi's Kileleshwa suburb, and an unusual waitress is causing excitement.
Thank you, Nadia.
Nadia is one of 3 robot waitresses incorporated here to improve service delivery. This is a first in East Africa.
You assign them duties in the morning like normal waiters,
You tell them which tables one particular robot is supposed to go, or what is expected to do there. Because, for instance, they do more than just survey. They sing happy birthday. For instance, let's say you do a reservation and you have a birthday. It's going to deliver you your cake with the message and everything, and also sing happy birthday with you with the background of waitresses.
Use of robotic technology in the food service industry is not new. Restaurants with robot waiters have opened in the United States, China, and other places. But the concept is new to Africa. Since opening in Nairobi 2 months ago, Robot Cafe staffers say the reception has been good, with the robots being the attraction for customers like Brooke Abito, who is here today with his family for lunch.
I was happy to show my kids this, in Africa, in your own backyard. So yeah, it was very good. You can see that the technology needs a bit of development, but it's really nice how the robots take the food, they come and serve you. And when I come back next time, I want to see the robots more interactive, taking your orders, bringing your food. But it's a very good first step.
According to government data, the hospitality industry is one of the big sources of employment in Kenya. The introduction of robots in the sector brings fears of people being driven out of work by machines. However, industry experts like Edith Ojuang say there is no cause for alarm, as the technology will just serve as a tool to improve efficiency and quality of service delivery.
I really don't think it can face off the entire human labor, but it will be incorporated still, just like we have incorporated the other technology, and we've used it to improve our human labor and worked together.
Ojuang's advice is for Kenyan schools to incorporate technology training into their hospitality curriculum in readiness for the shift.
If we keep training people the traditional way, and by the time they're released in the industry, technology has already gone a notch higher. It becomes scary for them already, and it becomes difficult to be able to adopt.
Experts say the era of automated restaurants has finally begun in Africa, and diners should expect more integration of robots in their dining experiences. Juma Majanga, VOA News, Nairobi.
In the summer of 1993, 46 Israeli, Palestinian, Egyptian, and American kids gathered at a camp in the U.S. state of Maine. The camp was the brainchild of journalist and author John Wallach, who wanted to provide children of war the chance to build a more secure future, and Seeds of Peace was born. Camp participants dig deep into the issues that divide them, building greater levels of trust, respect, and empathy. Today, Seeds of Peace has achieved global notoriety and sent more than 8,000 leaders back into their communities to create more just and inclusive societies. VOA's Jeff Swyckold reports.
As conflict and war rages on around the world, young people aged 14 to 17 gather in the U.S. state of Maine to plant Seeds of Peace.
Wait, do you know which bread is that?
Each summer for 30 years, Seeds of Peace brings together Israeli, Palestinian, Egyptian, Pakistani, Indian, and American kids. They have come to build greater understanding and friendship in the conflict zones where they live. Eva Armour is the Chief Impact Officer for Seeds of Peace.
I think for many of them, this is the first time they're really able to meet face to face, to have the kinds of slow conversations that enable them to better understand their different lived experiences.
Seeds of Peace says separation plays a big role in fueling conflict. Kids arrive in camp with the negative stereotypes they pick up from the media, their parents, and in their segregated communities. Camp is often the first time they've met someone from the other side. Shams is from Egypt. He was a camper in 2018 and returned this year as a counselor.
Then I come here and I meet those people that were supposed to be bad. And I played sports with them, I had meals with them, we cried together, we laughed together. And for me that was very special.
Like most summer camps, there are sports activities and group challenges, but there are also daily dialogue sessions where participants dig deep into their feelings about the conflicts that have ravaged their communities. Eva Armour is quick to point out, camp is not all fun and games.
This is not an easy place to be. This is a hard place to be on many days. It is emotional, it is difficult, and it needs to be because the issues that they're dealing with are real.
Seeds of Peace strives to break down those barriers. Aside from the dialogues, it is the constant direct contact through camp activities where the transformation begins and friendships are formed. 18-year-old Aliza is from Pakistan. She told us it was something as simple as cooking spices that fostered her friendship with a bunkmate from India.
She brought spices back from home that I didn't bring. So every meal we'd be like, oh, give me the chaat masala, like I need that right now. And stuff like that, or just the way we talk, the way our society works, the way, what do you call it? Like the patriarchy, right? Like the system of it is the same in both countries. It's just a lot of similarities.
Once the personal relationships are formed, campers begin to see conflict in a different way. 15-year-old Anna Jot is from Bombay, India.
What really stuck with me was like one has got to be conflict being more political than it is about the actual people of the land.
For security reasons, Seeds of Peace asked us not to speak to campers from the Middle East. Kamal is a camp counselor from Gaza. He made a harrowing escape to Egypt through gunfire with his family.
Actually, this camp is very challenging for the camp itself as leadership and also for the kids. Like them coming from their communities in the West Bank and Israel to come here and talk about peace is a huge challenge for kids. And actually understanding that makes us believe that those are actually the leaders of tomorrow.
Noam is a camp counselor from Israel.
And I think that just made it even more complicated, even more painful. Because I feel like almost every person, at least from Israel, has been directly impacted. And I think for me, it was the first time I felt like an actual victim.
Tonight is Culture Night, another chance to share their different experiences. Seeds of Peace says their research indicates 80% of the more than 8,000 alumni 2 to 3 decades out of camp are still actively working to transform conflict, and there are plans to plant more seeds.
If we can continue to add more people to that kind of a collective, working together across borders, within borders, to create that kind of world, then perhaps we can see the kinds of tipping points that we need to avoid the kind of violence that we see today.
Jeff Swicord, VOA News, Bath, Maine.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.